and welcome to That Squirrel Speaks. Today is Thursday, January 3rd, and this is episode 45. Hello, new people! Hello, returning viewers! This is going to be a different episode than normal, so if you're new for this one, this is not a typical format. There really is no typical format, but this is more atypical than is typical. Okay? Okay. So, today I will be talking about the Boardwalk, which I am currently wearing, and the Walpole, which is the sweater that I am working on right now, and comparing and contrasting the two yarns I used, because they are similar enough, I think, to compare and contrast, and that information might be useful for you. I know we're all starting to plan sweaters for the new year, so it might be helpful. So I'm going to do it. Okay. If you're not interested, no hard feelings. I'll see you next time. I do have one brief shenanigan, which I feel like I may have built up into more of a shenanigan than it is last week by telling you that I tell you about it this week, but it's also a miniature shenanigan, as this will be a miniature episode. Okay. So, the day after Christmas, my family and I, oh, by the way, I will apologize in the beginning. There will undoubtedly be flotsam of the audio type. My child is home, my dog is home. They're not playing. I started recording and they were playing, so I said that. But I actually had to stop the last recording because my little girl she has like a little recliner for her, and she somehow got her hand stuck in it. So I had to go MacGyver her out, which was very scary. I mean, funny in retrospect, but terrifying at the moment because you're really like, oh my gosh, I have to drive this kid with a giant chair to the emergency room because her hand is stuck in it forever. It's that kind of thing. But it's okay now. Everything's fine. She's a bag of frozen black-eyed peas on her hand, and she will be okay. By the way, you know how they always tell you to put the frozen peas on things, but then those peas are ruined because they melt. And I have a thing, I don't like to waste the foods. It makes me sad, and I'm like, oh, somebody picked those, or a machine picked them probably, but whatever. So my solution is to use dried beans. I always keep a pound of dried beans in a Ziploc bag in the freezer. They work almost just as well. Plus, they don't leak on anything. So, that's what we do here. Again, it doesn't work as well, I don't think, because they don't stay cold quite as long, but just put 2 pounds and rotate if you have a serious injury. Otherwise, 1 pound in the freezer is good enough for emergencies, unplanned style. So, there I go. Anyway, no, you're probably like, dude, we already thought that. Anywho, so we went sled riding. Now, we did not go sled riding last year because there just was not enough accumulated snow that hung around long enough to do anything with. But we did go the year before that, and it was actually quite some fun. It's the first time I had ever been sledding, really for real, forever. I think when I was a child, I attempted to sled ride on my grandparents' hill, which is not worthy of sled riding on. And even that was hit or miss. So it's really the first time I had ever been sled riding. Single mother, she worked. There was no time for silliness like sled riding. Not like I was deprived. Anywho, but my husband is all about sled riding. He actually has a crazy scar on his head. He has a crazy scar that like runs from here all the way back to here because he was sled riding with his son from a previous relationship, and he hit a tree and woke up in the emergency room and had to have he literally just opened his brain up. Not his brain, but the skin that's attached to his skull. God. Whoop. So he loves to sled ride because he sled rides despite that. Don't worry, we weren't near any trees. So, anywho, this is all about backstory today. Ta-da! So we were going sled riding. But because the time before that, we went and I felt very buff. I was the same size as I am now. I mean, give or take 20 pounds. So I was the same person that I am now. It's not like I woke up and was like, wah! But anyway, so I was the same person I am now. But evidently I was slightly more in shape. Because I remember being tired. But I went up and down the hill like, 7-8 times. And I was okay. I mean, I was tired, but I was not like, yeah. This time, that's what I did. We parked our car. The park that we go sledding at is just across the street pretty much. And so we didn't walk though because the kids on the way back are too tired, and quite frankly so are we. So we drove over and parked our car and then slogged. But the fast part of the hill is really close to the car, but it's the fast part of the hill, and our children are 6 and 7. We brought a friend's kid, and they are not aware enough of the world around them to like look out for other crazy people hurtling down them without any control. Because a lot of people do the disc sledding. You can't control that. Just like, watch out, you know. So we go around to the slower part of the hill, but that's also a longer walk. And we had about 8 inches of snow at that point, and it is like super heavy. Excellent for sledding snow. Not excellent for me hauling my patukas in. I am not a snowshoe hare at all. I don't know if that's a thing. Did I just make that up? Probably. But totally. Okay? Okay. So by the time we got to the hill, the first, like in the initial, I was done, really. I hate to admit it, because I have a lot of pride despite this business. So, like, I always try to tough everything out, but I really was like, oh my goodness. I have to stop, because if I do anything for a minute, I might just keel over here. But that was fine, because I just stood at the top of the hill with my camera and took lots of pictures. Like, I was there on purpose, you know. But eventually, I did, like, regain my composure and was able to sled. But, again, 2 years has passed. It was a little harder for me to get from a standing position to a sitting on sled position while straddling said sled and trying not to fall backwards or forwards or this. So anyway, the last sled of the evening, we did go down the faster hill. We have like an old Rubbermaid sled. It's very sturdy and good, and the kids, great for kids. But we also have an old, what are those called? Flexible flyer. Like, it's from the 60s. That was my husband's family's. So at the end of the night, we put the kids, or the end of the afternoon, we put the kids on the plastic one, sent them down, and I thought my husband was going to go on the wood one. And then I was really like having this moment of like, how am I going to get down this hill? Like, if I try to, I can walk up the hill, but I don't know if I can walk down the hill without, again, sliding down the hill on my tuchus. Not pretty. So finally, it was decided. Actually, I did not decide. My husband was like, get on the sled. He was already on the sled in the front. My husband is 6'4", by the way, and this big, approximately, to my this big. No joke. So he gets on the sled, and he scrunches up as much as he can, and he's like, come on, get on the sled behind me. And I'm like, dude, what? He's like, no, come on. But at the same time, I'm afraid that I can't get down the hill without a sled without dying, or walking like 3 miles to get around the curvature of the earth or whatever. So I'm like, okay. So again, I have to get from standing to on a sled, not in one graceful motion. So we had been chatting to this other older folks about our sled, and he was like, I'll give you a push. And I'm like, okay, humiliation. But anyway, so I go to sit down on the sled. I totally did not have enough room. Like, there was only like this much room, because he's so long that even though he was all scrunched up, there was only like this much room for this much room of me. So I go to sit down on the sled and promptly fall backwards onto my back. I'm sure my feet were even in the air, just for funsies. But I dusted off my pride, got up and sat on the thing. And then the dude pushed us. I'm sure he probably has a hernia now. Sorry, dude, who I don't know. I apologize if you are disabled because of pushing me down the hill. But so he pushes us down the hill. And then we almost totally kill a child. Well, she was not a child. She was a teenager, so she should have been looking. And of course I was screaming like, Gah! Gah! But everybody's screaming, so she didn't know we were screaming at her. Luckily she was okay. Shenanigans of humiliation. But whatever. It was still fun. I need to do some more moving. Less knitting, more moving, more moving. Anyway, so that was our shenanigans. And now we'll talk about sweaters. Okay, so I think I just stopped the video, and then I'm going to add this in because I finished the video, but my comparison of the yarns got a little crazy, even for me to understand. So after doing a load of dishes, this is why my sleeves are different now. Sorry, I forgot to change that until just a second. I've decided to try to redo the yarn comparison. So I apologize if I repeat something I've already said, or if this looks strangely different but sort of the same and it's confusing for you. That's why I thought I'd mention it. So here we go. So this is my Boardwalk. It is by, the pattern is by Heidi. See, I've already done this. I've already forgotten. It's by Heidi Kiermaier, I think. That's what I'm going with. That's exactly what it is. And it is knit out of the Peace Fleece DK Sport in the colorway Shaplova Mushroom. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about sweaters. Then I'm going to talk about the yarns. So hopefully that makes it less confusing than it would have been otherwise, which it was. But now I'm changing it. Okay. Okay. So this is a pattern that is written for bust sizes 30 to 48 with a suggested 1 to 2 inches of positive ease. That's not big enough for me. I have a bigger than 48-inch bust size. My actual bust size is more than that. I'm not going to tell you. I don't know why. All of a sudden I just got chickened out for a second, but it's bigger than that. He'll say that. It says on my project page. Whatever. Anyway. So, this yarn is a DK Sport. The pattern is written for loft, which is a fingering. Okay? So, the fingering weight in the loft, the pattern suggests, or the pattern gauge, is 25 stitches to 4 inches. My gauge on a US 3 for this DK Sport is 20 stitches to 4 inches. So my gauge is 1.25 times bigger. 25 over 20. Mine is 1.25 times bigger. So that's the reason I could get this pattern without making any adjustments. I just did a gauge adjustment essentially. Excuse me. So for example, round number. If I want to have a 50-inch finished sweater, if I want to have a 50-inch finished sweater, I need to know what size of the Boardwalk I need to make, right? So what size of the Boardwalk times 1.25 will give me 50 inches? So Boardwalk times 1.25 equals 50. Okay? Instead of doing multiply, to get it on the other side, you do divide, right? So 50 divided by 1.25 is in fact 40. So I should knit the size 40 if I want to end up with a 50. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to PM me or discuss on the Ravelry boards. I'll help you out. Or I will attempt to do so. Now, sometimes when you're doing gauge switcher-uppers, you also want to modify like certain details, for like stylistic details. For example, this has welting at the hem, as well as the sleeve welting and the chest welting. I did not change any of those because one thing I like about going up in gauge for a sweater that's not really written for a woman my size is that that those aspects get bigger too. So I probably have said this before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. But normally, you know, actually I think this does get bigger even the way this is constructed. It's not the same size square on the 34-inch as it is on the 48. That's correct. So this would naturally, with the pattern, increase in size so that it's the same proportion of the finished sweater that it is no matter what size. So that is a perfect design element in terms of resizing a sweater. What is not a perfect design element is like a, I can't remember which sweater it is, but there's a sweater that's relatively popular. It's a pullover that has like a pleat detail right at the collar. And it's not resized, obviously, for little tiny to big. And again, I understand why designers don't do that. It creates a lot of complications in pattern writing. I get it. I'm not trying to diss the pattern writers. Like, it is very complicated to try to do that for 8 different sizes to make that design aspect also bigger. Okay. But if you look at the project pages and you see that little pleat on a 34-inch bust and then you see it on a 54-inch bust, it makes it an entirely different sweater. And it looks less than attractive when it is downsized that much. I shouldn't say it looks less than attractive because it might look fine, but it's not what you automatically think you're going to get when you go in and knit that pattern. Do you know what I mean? So instead of it being like a third of the front of your sweater, it's like a 18th. It's much smaller. Proportionally is kind of weird looking. Again, it might be fine, and that might be what you wanted for your finished project, but it's probably not what you expected when you started, especially if you're a newer knitter. So I did all of the things as suggested. I did not change. I didn't make the welting at the bottom any narrower, or, less row repeats, anything like that.
Where's the tape?
I don't know where it normally is. If you see a change in light, that's because she's wearing a headlamp. She's making a birthday card. And it required intense illumination, evidently. So she's wearing a headlamp. So that is the Boardwalk. I like it quite a bit. As I said, I believe the pattern is written with 1 to 2 inches of positive ease in mind. Mine has 2 inches of positive ease, which I like at the bust, and I like at the hip, but don't like exactly in the middle. I have a very, it's big, but I have a hourglass shape. So my waist is smaller than my hips and my bust. The pattern, like a lot of the Wool People patterns, is written A-line. A lot of their patterns I would not change, like the Tinder is A-line. I would keep that A-line. The Walpole, which is another one I'll show you, is A-line. I like that one A-line. If I were going to knit this again, I would make it with hip or waist shaping. So decrease to the waist, increase to the bust. Just because of I think it would look better, just slightly more fitted, especially in the back. There's a little bit extra fabric. That said, it fits better than a sweater I could have bought in the store by far. Just something I would do different in the future with this specific silhouette. So I think that's all I have to say about that. I think. Okay, so I'm also knitting the Walpole. And my super cute project bag. Oh, I'm totally gonna make some of these on Monday, yo. I'll figure out some way to make them available to you because I like them, and we're all knitting sweaters, and we need big project bags. So this project bag currently has. Oh, did I tell you? Oh, Tova Grace,
What?
could you do me a big favor? Could you come over here and hand me that sweater? After I recorded last, I took the body out of the bag because.
Did I up the one headlight?
Honey, it's okay there. It's not like it's not working.
And I need the tape.
Well, I don't know where it is. I'll get it for you in a minute. There's some on top of the refrigerator if you feel like you're brave and you want to climb up there.
On the refrigerator?
So this project bag did have my actual Walpole up to the elbow, or not to the elbow. That would be weird. To the armpit. And then, actually, just don't get it. I will get it for you in a little bit. There's some on top of the computer desk. I see it. It's right next to the stapler. Up on top, way on top, next to the stapler. To the right of the stapler. There you go. You're hot. Just reach back a little bit longer. You totally wanted to see this, right? Sorry. So I have this up to the armpit. Hooray! This is where I saw you last. So I've made good progress on that. Difference. Oh, the Walpole is by Hannah Fettig. And thank you to, I believe, Kathy. Yes, Kathy, for gifting to me for my birthday. Thank you. I finally got around to it. So it is by Hannah Fettig, and it also does not go up. I think it goes up to 51 3/4, if I am recalling correctly, which I may not. 52 3/4. So here's this to the armpit. You can't see this. I don't know why I said that. The pattern is written from the closest to my size to be 21 inches to the armpit. I'm not doing it. It's 18 inches now. So I have a sweater that's very, well, it's not a sweater, it's like a knit top that's very similar in outline to this one, and it's 18 inches, and I'm just going to go with that because I'm done. So the other difference is I'm knitting mine in the round. Theirs is written for flat, but oh, I'm so not doing that many stitches purled back. Oh, I'm already crazy enough. So there is the middle. There's this, there, you can see it on the pattern, which I'm actually, but there's like this is not, the whole thing is not my steek. Don't worry, I'm not crazy in that way. But it still just be split up, and then I'll do like an applied I-cord or something on that. US 3s. So that, and then I have this sleeve. I have a couple more inches on a sleeve. This is the other big modification I did besides knitting it in the round, is that the The sweater is written for the cuff circumference to be the same as the sleeve circumference. I've already said that before. Not happening on my size. I would have a 20-inch cuff. It would be, not only would it be ludicrous looking, but it would also be highly impractical because it would get caught on everything and would rip. It'd look disgusting. It would be in so many gravies. It would be out of control. That implies I eat gravy every day. I don't. That's a fat person myth. If you're not a fat person, you don't really do that. Anyway, wild America of fat people. It would just be completely impractical. So I cast on for mine 80% of the finished sleeve circumference as the cuff. So it'll still have that very, I don't want to say casual, but that very almost straight silhouette, but not a little bit more realistic in my size. Again, if you have a smaller sleeve circumference, it will look cute on you, but not in my size. I don't judge if you did it in my size. I don't judge. I don't care, whatever. So I was going to show you that my project bag, it did have my sweater in it, and I just threw that back over there already, but it did have that, plus my sleeve, plus 2 balls in there. Now it has a hank instead, so yeah. So it's beefy and holds a bunch of stuff. So that's the Walpole. I can't really comment anything about fit or anything, because obviously it's not anywhere near being done. What else do I want to say about that? That's all I want to say about that for now. I'll talk more about it when it's finished. Ish, or more. Now, I will try to talk about the Beaverslide versus the Peace Fleece. Now, I say versus. It's not like a knockdown, drag out or anything. One is not better than the other in any way at all, but they might have more appropriate applications. So, let's first talk about gauge that I got. Now, again, we all know the gauge is highly variable and you can get a lot of different gauges out of the same yarn. It's just going to create a different fabric. Okay? So the Boardwalk, I knitted on US 3s with, again, the Peace Fleece DK Sport. And I got 20 stitches to 4 inches. If I say to an inch later, I'm wrong. 20 stitches to 4 inches, because I will say to an inch. I did a lot on the other recording. The Walpole, I am doing, it's a much looser fabric, still on a 3, but the gauge on that is more like, sorry, I didn't do them by 4s. So this one is basically 5 stitches to the inch for the Peace Fleece. And the Walpole on the Beaverslide, again, on a US 3, is more like 5.5 stitches to the inch. It's a much more airy fabric, but that part of that's the yarn, part of it's the gauge. It's a combination effect. So gauge. What else? So gauge. Yardage. Okay. This is not a full skein. 350 yards to the skein, which I believe is a 4-ounce skein. It doesn't say that on here, but 350 yards. This is a full skein. Of the Beaverslide, you get 458 yards, so 100 extra yards. And you can tell that, I'll talk about it later. This is much airier, much loftier than this. This is still very lofty, but not as much as this. Okay, this has much more spin, and I'll talk about that in a second too. Cost, $14.50 a skein, $9.25 a skein. Shipping, cheaper, old school. She very specifically, the Peace Fleece folks, very specifically on their site state that they do not inflate the cost of the yarn to cover shipping. And in our modern times, that's what a lot of people are forced to do because of yahoos like me who demand free shipping for everything. But if you remember, if you're my age, I'm 34, when you were a kid and you bought, you looked at your grandparents' catalogs and you dreamed about it, the shipping was insanely expensive. And you're just like, whoa. Because that's actually how much shipping costs, unless you're a giant company and get a super great deal with with UPS. I was thinking Amazon. But shipping is very expensive, especially for smaller companies like Beaverslide and Peace Fleece. So she specifically says she does not increase the price of her yarn to accommodate for that. So old school shipping, new school shipping. If you figure it out by the ounce, by the yard, shipping on a certain quantity, they're very comparable in price. Don't let that be the deciding factor between one or the other. Another factor, lots more colors, fewer colors. They have a lot of colors in their worsted weights, but their sport weight, DK, whatever it's called, Sport DK, has fewer options. I think it's a newer product for them. So I don't know if they are planning on offering more colors in the future. Okay, so that's your gauge, yardage, price, fiber content. 70% merino, 30% nylon, 80% merino, 20% nylon. I'm surprised this is merino, to be honest with you. Probably just the increase in spin and the additional mohair content. I think the Beaverslide is softer to the touch, softer to the skin, but they're both very nice. Again, they are not Madeline Tosh, Malabrigo, smooshy, gooshy, pooshy soft. But 20 years ago, they would have been like butter. So that's that. They are both woolen spun. This is spun by the same folks who make Loft, Harrisville Designs. This is mule spun in Canada because the folks who do Beaverslide are in Montana. So it's a different company that does this. In terms of, so this one is, fewer knots, more knots. And I'll talk to you why about that. This has much less spin in it. This is definitely woolen spun. Much less spin in the single, much more loosely plied. Okay. It's a great equivalent for the Loft. Again, I've not used the Loft personally, but looking at the patterns that, looking what's knit with it, I would say this is probably a closer approximation in terms of diameter, because the Peace Leaf is thicker, a little bulkier, but also very lofty. Breaks very easily. Okay. I don't want to say, and now don't think, oh my gosh, it broke like that. It's terribly on. I've knit lots of garments out of this. I really like it. If you've ever knit with Lopi or heard of Lopi, Lopi is almost unspun wool. You could breathe on it and it'll break apart. It makes very durable sweaters. Okay. So this, and yeah, I'm popping it. But you go a little further. So it's still, I've never had it break while I'm knitting with it. Unless my dog was sitting on it and I yanked on it. But I mean, I've never had it break when I was knitting with it or trying to pull it out of the skein or skeining it. I've never had it break. But it does have more knots in the skein. There's more yardage, so there's more chance for knots. But also, it is very loosely spun and loosely plied. It's manufacturing-wise, it's going to have more knots in it. I've never had, I mean, it's not crazy, but you're going to get knots in here. Knots are usually in one ply. I think this, I don't know, I can't remember if I bought 4 balls or 3 balls of this, but I'm sorry. Fail on my part. I think it was 4. It had to be 4 because 3 would be ridiculous in my size. No, I didn't have any knots in any of them, I don't think. I'm almost positive I didn't have any knots. So if that's something that tweaks you out, this would be a better option. This, again, loosely plied, loosely spun. You can see that if you're not sure by doing this. See, it just wants it barely. It has to be coaxed to go towards itself. Whereas, if I can find it, the Peace Fleece has a much tighter spin. And see, it loves itself. See, look at that. Makes it stronger in the strand. It'll break. But again, you would expect it to. I'm popping it. I'm not like,
Mom,
Yes, Tova.
what is that?
O-I-N-K. Wink.
What?
O-I-N-K. Oink. That's how you spell, right? So, that twist. Okay, there's things about the twist. The greater twist will give you better stitch definition. This still has lovely stitch definition. You can see the ribbing. Still very nice. Okay. But, let me show you my bosoms. Much pop, right? The welting, very pop. And that has something to do with how much twist is in it. It's twisted up on itself, less airy, more compact. It's not going to bleed out into the root. It's not me in an airplane seat next to you where I bleed into you. It doesn't like scoosh over to the stitches next to it. The Peace Fleece is tighter. That's just how it is. You're going to have more delineation between the strands, between the stitches. Okay. Oh, that does not mean that this is a less durable yarn. Okay. I have an Emmeline that with the Beaverslide 2-ply sock, 2-ply sport, whatever. It is a very nice sweater. It is pilled less than any sweater I've ever made, I think. I'm impressed with how little it pills, is what I'm saying. For a mohair, especially. Way less than like a Cascade 220 or a Lion Brim Fisherman's Wool. I don't think that's made out of mohair, but you know what I mean. I'm very impressed with how little it pills. There's still pills. I mean, it's made of an actual real fiber. It's not fake, but I'm still impressed with it. I can't really speak to it as much on the Peace Fleece because this doesn't have sleeves, and that's where the majority of my pilling happens, at least initially. Eventually, you'll get it in the bust and probably in the hip or tummy. So I can't really give you a great side-by-side comparison on that, but I've worn this now 3 full days. 1 day sledding under a coat, and it still looks great. Looks great. This one has slightly more halo. Again, 30% mohair versus 20%. In terms of like the length of the mohair, it just has a slightly bigger halo. Not like mohair. I mean, not like a full-on like kid silkays or anything, but it's slightly more. What else?
He spelled birthday and Lucy on there.
Mm-hmm. So that, I think, is the majority of what I wanted to say about the two compared to one another. I think, right? That makes sense. So, if you have any questions, of course, I'll have a thread out on the Ravelry board. You can ask away, and I'll be happy to answer anything that I can. I will knit with both of these again. I've already got plans. And I'll see you next week for a full and regular episode. Bye!